Gentleman Fairfax, Mr. Simon.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, this is a familiar bill. We've seen this once before earlier this year, and we saw this twice last year. And actually a third time, we saw a version of this during the veto session. And I know that there are probably some folks out there that think there's not a single bill that expands concealed carry permits that I could possibly vote for out there. But actually, at the veto session, the governor sent down a bill that would expand concealed carry permits to petitioners subject to protective orders that I actually did vote for. And that language, unfortunately, was rejected by the House, and none of that language is incorporated that's in the bill before you today. So for those of you that think I really like to find a way to vote for a bill that seems to be really well-intentioned, right? This is really about allowing people, probably mostly women, subject to protective orders, who feel comfortable, who want to carry a concealed weapon to protect themselves. There ought to be a way to do that. And the answer is there is. But there are three big differences between the bill I voted for last year and the bill that's before you today. The first big difference is that the bill that the governor sent down said that the person seeking the protective order actually had to ask that it be considered a de facto concealed carry permit. They actually had to want that, and they had to have applied for a concealed handgun permit. And that's important because this is a very stressful time for people that are involved in this situation. They're there seeking an emergency protective order. They're scared, they're fearful, something's going very wrong in their relationship when they feel like they need the court to intervene. And to tell them, hey, guess what? This piece of paper you've got, it does two things. It protects you from your spouse, but it also allows you to carry a concealed carry permit. You ought to think about doing that. I think that's not the right message we ought to be sending in those situations. It's not what we ought to be telling people if they haven't even asked about it, if it isn't even their intention to do that. The second thing it does that's different is it requires the person who's involved to provide proof that they're not otherwise prohibited from carrying a permit. So you got to ask for the judge to stamp your order as a concealed carry permit, and then you have to prove to the judge that you're not otherwise prohibited from carrying it. You haven't been convicted of another crime. There's no other reason you can't be carrying it. And then third, and most importantly, the bill that the governor sent down says you have to have completed a valid firearms training course that requires some in-person training, because the last thing you want to inject into a situation that's as volatile as that, where you have someone seeking a permanent or an emergency protective order, is to tell them they ought to go get a handgun, they ought to carry it around concealed, and not give them any training in how to deal with it and how to handle that. Because that's going to lead to more dangerous situations. It's going to lead to more fatalities. We know that as a fact. And I would hope that it would be the pleasure of the body to not pass this bill and not have it go, not pass this bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman Shenandoah, Ms. Gilbert.
The gentleman yield for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'll yield.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask the gentleman, in light of his admonition about training and the importance of training, the same thing that I asked the gentleman from Charlottesville last year when he was suggesting how important training is. And I would ask the gentleman if he voted for the bill that I had to provide such training to such victims in such circumstances.
Speaker, I would answer the gentleman that my reason for not supporting the gentleman's bill was that it included—
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Was that it included a requirement that they be advised that they ought to go out and get a gun.
Okay. Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 66, noes 32.
Ayes 66, noes 32. The bill